There are moments in a man's life when the senses betray him, and reason, despite its might, stands silent before shadows that move alone in the night. I arrived at Ruthven Manor just before sunset, as the fog crept from the highlands like ghostly fingers wrapping the roads and cold stones. I stopped before an ancient, rusted iron gate. Above it, weathered Latin inscriptions barely readable. Mors porta vitae est. Death is the gate to life. I studied the manor with unease, a gray building topped with a narrow tower and a domed roof, surrounded by cypress trees that swayed without wind. Despite my academic excitement, I felt a primitive instinct, a voice inside urging me to turn back. I ignored it. I had received an invitation from an old friend, Lord Malcolm Ruthven, who had written a confused letter, asking for my help as a physician and a researcher in psychological phenomena to investigate a series of strange events affecting his family. I entered the manor and was received by the elderly housekeeper, Mrs. Morag, who eyed me as if she'd been expecting me for a long time. "He's upstairs, sir, but he's changed. Everyone's changed since she appeared." "She?" I asked. "The Grey Lady, sir. She's returned." That night, I dined with Lord Malcolm and the family around a long table in the dining hall. The atmosphere was tense, silence hanging heavy, until his elderly grandmother broke it with a whisper. "Not all that the eye cannot see is unreal, Doctor. Sometimes truth dwells behind the veil." I pondered her words. They were strikingly similar to something my philosophy professor at Cambridge once said. I simply offered a polite smile and noted the phrase later in my black journal. After dinner, I spoke with Malcolm in his study. He looked pale, exhausted. "I saw her, Victor. She stood at the foot of my bed, dressed in a gray cloak, faceless, and whispered my name. In the morning, my aunt was dead. It could be exhaustion-induced hallucinations, or a collective psychological effect triggered by ancestral myths," I replied. But deep down, I wasn't convinced. The next day, I wandered the manor. I noted everything: sounds from the lower floor, corridors not on the blueprints, portraits whose eyes followed too closely, and cold drafts moving without cause. I met Eileen, Malcolm's cousin, a sharp-minded woman with eyes that held a mix of defiance and sorrow. "You don't believe in ghosts, do you, Doctor?" she asked. "I believe in nothing that cannot be measured or analyzed." She smiled faintly. "Then you'll have trouble here. Some secrets hate being measured." She showed me old journals belonging to a woman named Margaret Ruthven. I read them that evening. She wrote of dreadful dreams and a baby crying behind the walls. One disturbing entry read, "The Grey Lady always appears before the manor takes one of us." Past midnight, I was awakened by a soft knock at my door. I opened it slowly. No one. But something inexplicable. On the cracked mirror, written in a dark hue, were the words, "She is here." I stepped into the hallway and felt my blood freeze. I saw, even if for a moment, a gray, ash-covered feminine figure at the corridor's end. Faceless, watching. I ran toward her, but she vanished like smoke. The next morning, I stumbled upon an old painting in the west wing that had fallen from the wall. Behind it, a small cavity. Inside, a metallic box, untouched for a century perhaps. It contained letters and journals from Margaret Ruthven. I read them obsessively. They told of a secret love, an illegitimate child, and then a sudden loss. The baby was said to have died in infancy, but Margaret believed the child was taken, Her final letter was chilling. They buried my daughter without letting me say goodbye. I hear her crying in the walls. I shall remain here, searching, even after death. My confidence began to fracture. I shared everything with Eileen. We agreed to search the old cellar beneath the manor, where it was rumored that plague-era bodies were buried in secret. That night, the Grey Lady appeared again, this time outside Malcolm's room. By morning, Malcolm was dead, his eyes wide, his face pale, and on the floor, a shaky drawing of a woman in a gray cloak. I was on the brink. All my scientific tools had failed. My notebooks were filled with sketches and observations, meaningless in the face of the ghost. Worst of all, they burst into flames in the fireplace, in front of my eyes, without a single hand touching them. I isolated myself in the manor's library. I reviewed everything: Margaret's letters, my notes, the grandmother's gaze, Eileen's tears. No, the Grey Lady wasn't a killer ghost. She was a mother, a victim, and her shadow was a scream stretched across time. I suggested to Eileen a symbolic ritual, an offering of peace to Margaret and her lost child. We gathered her belongings and went to the family graveyard, where nameless stones marked forgotten deaths. There, before a crumbling grave, I read Margaret's final letter aloud. I swear I shall remain until truth is spoken. The wind howled, the grave trembled, a strange warmth rose, and I saw her, the Grey Lady, standing atop the hill, watching us. For the first time, I saw her eyes, not a specter's eyes, but a mother's. She faded with the wind. Days later, the manor fell silent. The Grey Lady never appeared again. The cracked mirror had healed. The footsteps ceased. I left, carrying Margaret's journals in my satchel, and in my heart, something I could no longer deny. There are things, despite every scientific method, that defy explanation, and perhaps should not be explained. I wrote in my new notebook, "In some places, the past does not die. It waits to be heard. Waits to be heard."